Fragments of silicon, guaranteed to not be affected by the heat.
Do you guys hear that?
Hear what?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm guessing that the music ended.
Yeah, it ended.
Yeah. The problem is we actually can't hear it usually. I have to use the stream to hear it, and that's
there's a delay there.
Yeah, there's a delay.
Yeah.
So
sorry about that.
yeah, it's like you got to figure out how to play that internally because I'm like, I can't. I literally cannot hear that playing.
In fairness, I think the way Pettyfan does that involves using a program that is entirely deprecated. So
there's probably other solutions to that. I'm just saying if there's like a delay in the audio, that's because I'm waiting for the cue to come over through the stream, not optional. Right. Anyway, so with that in mind, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. Joining me as always is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Let's start with Petty, if he's here.
I think I'm here. I hope I'm here.
Yeah. And, well, how are you doing this week?
Overall, okay. I've been starting to have some pain in my side again. I don't know if it's from sleeping in a weird position or if there's something wrong with the stent. So that's something we need to keep an eye on.
Well, when's your next go to the doctor?
I believe it's next Monday is my 6-week follow-up for my leg.
Like, that's good, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to be up and around soon.
Hey, no kidding. I'm like, well, I guess we'll find out next week.
Yeah, and like, as far as gaming stuff goes, I completed Spyro Ripto's Raid and got the Platinum Trophy on that as well. So all that's left is Year of the Dragon. And in Final Fantasy XIV news, the new raids have finally come out, but we won't be starting on that till Thursday because some people were still behind. So hopefully I can get back to streaming that soon as well. And that's about it on my end.
All right. Twilight, how about you?
There's been too much going on over here. I've been getting to know my neighbors fairly well. Apparently one of the kids have come to know me as that man.
Like, I hope that doesn't come with qualifiers.
He's like 3 or 4 years old, so he just knows me. He doesn't know my name, so he just calls me that man.
Well, just as long as it, you know.
I just thought it was funny. But anyway, work is going well. We've been getting some rain here and there, which has cooled everything off, which I'm grateful for.
Okay.
In terms of gaming, I've been trying out one of the games I'll be doing for this week, and that's about it.
All right. Well, Alex, it's your turn.
It's been very humid around here. It seemed like it should rain today, but apparently it decided mostly not to, so... But at least the temperature's going down a little bit, so that's probably good. Bunch of games got updates recently, so that's neat. Splatoon 2 got the post-Splatfest update where you can now play in Splatfest mode in private lobbies, so that's neat.
Mm-hmm.
The Dragon Quest Hero came out for Smash Ultimate, and that's interesting to play. It feels kind of technical since he has a lot of pretty situational moves, and some of them are not exactly guaranteed to happen. And for this week, I was playing a little bit of the game Paradox Soul that I'm going to be reviewing, so that's mainly where I am. I'm still a little bit frustrated about not knowing exactly how much I'm going to have to pay for dental and car stuff, but I have appointments to deal with some of it, so we'll see how that goes.
Right. I guess it's my go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, this Friday marks my 60th birthday. And let's see. Oh, I've already done the birthday thing with relatives. I'm kind of had to do that this past weekend because this weekend they are wrapped up in other affairs. That's adulthood for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we went to the local Italian restaurant. Thankfully, no birthday song. I've always hated that shit.
I liked it when I was a kid only because it meant I got cake and ice cream.
Understandable, but when you reach adulthood, it grew tiresome to me. Very, very tiresome. Anyway, let's see, and that's about it as far as news in my corner. So, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast, and this week joining us is Megan Summers of Screwtape Studios.
Hi, how are you going?
We're doing fine. At least we seem to be doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, how we like to get started is to get to know the person behind the game, behind the studio, and whatnot. And we like to do that by asking them what got them interested in video games on both a personal and a professional level.
Oh, it's a good one. Like most of us in our mid-30-ishes, we'll just put it there. I've been playing games for about 80% of my life, really. I started out playing all the games that my older brother played on PC. Really hit those id PC platformers were a big part of my life growing up. And ironically, my business partner as well. Probably not actual irony there. Yeah, so the Duke Nukem's Doom, even. But massive Commander Keen. It was a little escape from me. I grew up in a little country town that became a biggish country city, and so video games kept me away from causing trouble, I guess. Then, as a game developer, it was a weird transition for me. And my business partner, actually, Anthony, we met in theatre school about 15 years ago. Both loved games. Both thought, hey, I don't want to be a starving actor for the rest of my life, so I'll become a starving indie game dev instead.
Well, it is a rough road.
It is, but just like with acting, because games are essentially such a creative act, there is money isn't the only thing that you do get out of it in the end. It's I guess like for you guys as well, it's the community as well that you're building, who you're getting to meet, what you're getting to create. Those things are almost just as important at the moment. It's fulfilling anyway.
Right, and though prior to becoming an indie dev, did you have any large publisher, large developer experience?
I actually did. So we're in Brisbane in Australia, and about 11 years ago, Brisbane was going to be. It was being touted as the next Silicon Valley, but for games. We had Pandemic Australia, Sega, THQ. We had Chrome, which at the time was one of the biggest independent studios they had in Australia, definitely. But they were sort of up there around the world. And so I actually entered games in one of the more traditional routes of get into QA and start your career from there. So I was lucky enough to work at Pandemic Australia and was there when EA bought them out. So that was an interesting time in transition, seeing a big indie studio get taken over by a big corporation. It was a very interesting time until the game, of course, was cancelled and the studio got shut down. And then I moved over to Chrome as well, who was working on a lot of bigger games. They had a lot of Star Wars games at the time, and some other ports of some of those bigger games, but the Transformers 2 Wii version of the game. So it was it was interesting working on those auxiliary style those auxiliary games that weren't for the primary platforms. But after working at THQ, just before the original Avengers game that was talked about got shut down, and then the studio got shut down, my business partner was just about to finish his programming degree. And so it was a bit of a do it now, make our own jobs, or maybe not survive in the industry, or have to leave the country as well, which is something that I probably am way more prepared for now if it ever happened. But back in my early 20s, it was a much more scary proposition to move across the world to work at another big studio, or stay at home and build back up, help our community build back up to where we once were.
Right. And this is a story that comes up whenever we talk to an Australian game developer. But it's like, for those who aren't keen on it, about a decade plus ago, the Australian game development scene essentially collapsed in terms of the AAA space. And
yeah, definitely.
And what is there now is essentially a patchwork of like indie developers, and there's still a few big-ish fish around, but nothing on the scale of a EA AAA studio. I mean, EA has a mobile game studio there, one of the biggest in the nation, but it's that's not working on the next Star Wars Battlefront game, for example.
Exactly. It's been quite interesting. As soon as our dollar went up when the GFC happened, we were no longer a pretty cheap place to send developers. But we were lucky enough that a lot of our international developers who had come over to the big studios, not everyone stayed, but a few people did, and a few people using that knowledge that they had helped bring up sort of the new indie devs, which it's never completely disappeared. Although unfortunately this week we did get the sad news that one of our biggest companies is shutting down, Defiant Development.
The hand of fate.
Yeah, exactly. And both Anthony and I had worked on games there. I came over and did all the QA for Hand of Fate 1 and 2. They've been a great support for giving jobs to people when, your studio might not be doing as well, or just need that little bit of an injection of proper funds for a while. Oh, but it's going to leave a hole, but not a massive one in the end. They've been around for so long and helped so many other smaller studios get to their sort of find their footing that it's become almost that the whole of Brisbane especially is not going to back down.
Like, still, it is unfortunate that such a renowned developer is closing. Like,
Definitely.
Though, shifting away from the larger industry, how long ago did you found Screwtape?
So it was actually at the end of 2010 we officially started, but we spent about 4.5 or 5 years working in the mobile game space. Because we came into it, it was almost a trial by fire. There wasn't someone on our team that was the business person. Sometimes when kids now, not kids, but people leaving uni now and starting an indie studio, they're told a lot more that this is probably the way you'll go. So get together your friends who've got the skills. And we had to learn a lot of that stuff. So we decided to make smaller games. Plus, the iPhone had just been released in Australia about a year before. Fruit Ninja had just come out, and they were from a Brisbane studio as well. So there was all this energy there that mobile could be this place for everyone to succeed. But we realised that our heart lie outside of mobile. With nothing against mobile games, but the size of game that you can make is quite restrictive, especially at the time with technology and what could actually be done on the phones. So it took us about 5 years to decide, okay, that's it. Let's go. If we're running a company making games, let's do what we came here to do. And for us, that was really about getting a game, a mid to larger size game out on PC and consoles. And that became Damsel.
Let me see. Where did the idea for? Well, I suppose before we get into that, for the uninitiated, what is Damsel?
So Damsel we're calling it an arcade platformer. It's platformers where our hearts are, but the space is quite. There's a lot of platformers out there, so we wanted to differentiate ourselves a little bit. It's you play as Agent Damsel. You're running around the world trying to uncover a conspiracy that's happening with the vampire population in the world. There's a little bit of the feeling, that true blood feeling in the vampires, but then we also mixed it with our roots of the Commander Keen, Duke Nukem. There's a lot of whimsy and a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes. It was never about preaching to anyone. It was more about just finding a fun, action-y character that we could then put into this fast-paced platformer world.
And looking at the game footage that we have playing, it looks like it's a run-and-gun type of platformer.
It definitely is. It's got a lot of running gunning aspects, but there's also this side to it that's much more puzzle based. When we look at it, it's you're running and gunning, but who you're shooting, when you're shooting them, getting that higher score as well is and then finishing off the missions that you get in each level as well. And
okay, in terms of influence, you cite the Commander Keen series. Were there any wells you drew upon in terms of the gameplay, in terms of influence?
Definitely the games like Bomberman that had that same feel, but were faster. Like Commander Keen's influence is much more of the puzzle side of the how you get around a mission. But then things like Bomberman, even Pac-Man. If you look at the game, it's Pac-Man on steroids, really. You're in an arena with one mission, you've got people following you and enemies that you've got to get out of the way of. it's that speed came from those style of arcade games.
Right. And this being an arcadey type shooter, is there any sort of score to keep track of?
Yes, definitely. So most of the game is either we've got 2 leaderboards at the end of every mission. You've got your high score or your fastest time, and so the balance is between which side do you want to go for? Do you want to be a completionist and take out all of the missions, get that highest score, complete all the side objectives in each mission as well? Getting those combos for, we've got one of our action shots that really is inspired by Commander Keen is the pogo shot. So when you shoot down from in the air, you get a little boost. But if you shoot multiple enemies while still in the air, that just gives you more. The high score goes up then.
Like, so kind of a mid-air combo thing.
Yeah. It's we really tried to look at how to make the scoring encourage the or sit nicely with her agility. She's a fast-paced. She can flip, double jump, dash in the air, all before you hit the ground. And so getting those score bases based on that then and keeping people up in the air. One of our achievements is actually to shoot shoot 20 coffins in a row without touching the ground at all. And so that score relating to it was really important to us.
Mm-hmm. Like, and let's see, how long is the game? Like, is this something that you'll be able to get through in a couple hours?
Some of our best players, we've got a few speedrunners, can get through most of it in probably under 2 hours. Easy. But we look, because there's 3 episodes in the game. Each one adds, it gives you 5 new missions, new environments, sorry. And so it does get bigger as you go along. So between 15 and 20 hours all up is sort of maybe a first-time players go through. But you can definitely smash that timing down a lot.
Sounds about what I would expect from a game of this nature. And on that note, outside of time attacks, how amiable is this game towards speed running?
We have done a lot of work as we were in early access. We had a couple of speedrunners come on into the community quite early. And so a lot of the game is actually Anthony sat and designed specifically, tuned based on the feedback from people who were already speedrunning it. So in the first 6 months, especially of our early access, the tuning that we were doing to the design was definitely specific to speedrunners, and even the path that you choose as well. Those have been very hand designed and tweaked then based on speedrunners' feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And also, actually, sorry, even having the leaderboard at the end of the mission that gives the highest times, that came in from some suggestions and ideas from our community.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of the critiques that they offered?
At the very beginning, it was, which bugs were stuffing them up and things like that. Those little things that you think as a developer, okay, we want to get a build out for people to play. We know there's a couple of tiny things in that early access build, but they were definitely one of the first things that came up. After that, it was Damsel can she auto ledge grabs, but we lessened this. We widened the space that you sort of the how quickly she will grab or how close you have to be, and then also being able to fall straight past those ledges by just holding down. They were big things because they were sort of some of the things that were just catching those really good speedrunners without even trying.
In what fashion? Like outside of like them being bugs?
Well, the ledge grab had always been the auto ledge grab was always part of the design, but we realized it was a little too sensitive, and so you could be falling just along a ledge, and where somebody going for a high score might want to grab onto it so they can shoot down and wait for an enemy to get into their path. The speedrunners just wanted to be able to keep moving, and so lessening how sensitive that was meant that our players who were playing much more for the score and concentrating on that, they're able to use the design exactly the same as they would have, but with just giving speedrunners that little bit more of a gap so that they could fall down to a ledge that they wanted to be on without getting that half a second of being caught on the ledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like one of those things that's important to speedrunners.
Yeah, it's it was really interesting because we haven't had designed a game before that had speedrunner interest. It was really interesting hearing from the community. We had someone just play Damsel in the Australian speedrunning competition about a month ago, or even maybe 3 weeks ago. And so having people who are dedicated to speedrunning, not just enjoy it, but it's part of their life, was really interesting because the way that games are played, there's not that much difference, but those small things really, really give them hiccups.
Right. And on the topic of speedrunning, has there anyone who's been trying to do the goal of getting on both leaderboards at the same time?
Not many of them, no. I think the way that it's balanced is you can't really... You could get onto both at the same time, but you'll never be at the top of both in the same run.
Makes sense. You know, like, I'd imagine like there's a few people who would be mad enough to attempt the feat. But, if it's not in the design, it's not in the design. So to speak.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, we didn't want to make it possible to have almost the same people at the top of everything. You've really got to make that choice.
Right. Anyway, so how long did it take you to develop Damsel?
First mission objective.
What now?
Hi. I think someone might have dropped out slightly.
Oh. Okay, it might have been a technical hitch there. Anyway, so how long did it take you to develop Damsel?
So Damsel's actually been in production for about 4.5 years now. The game actually started completely differently. It was still a platformer, but it was much more Metroidvania style. Enter a level from the start, play through, find your door to exit, completing in that way. And we were lucky enough to actually be put in contact with a publisher agent. So there's someone who looks at the game and says, look, I could probably get you a publisher for this. And the feedback was, we love it, it's beautiful, the story will work, but there are just too many games like this out there. And so we went back to the drawing board and looked really quickly at what we could use, what we already had, and what were the things we didn't want to give up when it came to our design. And re-implemented this the mission-based rather than level entry and exit-based game. And so that took us about a year just to go from getting the first prototype up and running to completely changing that prototype.
I'm not surprised. Like, that is game development in a nutshell. Like,
oh, definitely. Even since we've been out, we've we don't see the game as being, 'cause now that it's out on, it's the official release on Steam. That doesn't mean we can't add, change, update. It's very much a living game to us. Only about a month and a half ago, we put out a new build that had completely updated UI. The whole game had been sort of framed in a different way from that UI space as well. We don't see anything really as precious and has to stay.
And was that done to center everything because of the console versions?
Yeah, in the end, working on the different console versions, there's those small UI things that, on a Switch it doesn't work the same, or it just doesn't feel right, the same movement, the same mechanics. And we really are just in that selecting level, things like that. So we really wanted to change it up, so that all of our builds didn't have different UI, and really consolidated into one really tight design.
Makes sense to me. Like, especially if you are dealing with different systems.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the consoles, so a quick backstory here. This game actually first released on Steam in, October of 2018?
Yeah.
And it's going to be seeing a release on the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch in a few days here.
Yeah, 5 days now.
Mm-hmm.
There should be 7th. Whoa, the 7th of August. It should. It'll be actually releasing. We are in pre-order at the moment on both of the consoles.
Mm-hmm.
It's an exciting time, sort of seeing a whole new group of players that who don't play on Steam at all. The Switch will be the most interesting. Just seeing the new players, especially with the Lite coming out this year as well.
Right. And was there a particular impetus on like it's a strange combination of consoles, Xbox One and Switch. I suppose the question that beckons here is, why the lack of a PlayStation 4 version?
Mainly just getting onto the platform, becoming a partner itself has taken a little while for us. Hopefully there's a little bit of movement on that at the moment. We can't announce anything, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to make an announcement for that, for the PS4.
Okay. And in regards to the Switch version, did you have to make any compromises outside of redesigning the UI to get this game, to work on the Switch?
No, not really. Our side hustle as a company is also porting games. So Anthony's had some amazing experience over the last 2 years of getting other games from independent studios on all of the platforms, and so that experience, I think, meant that we were able to keep the whole integrity of the art style. That was our biggest worry, was having any art style changes because of it. But no, she played pretty well first up on the Switch, and we were very, very happy with that.
Oh, that's good to hear. I mean, it's not so much a matter of power, but there have been action-heavy games on the Switch that have run into bottleneck problems. Looking at you, Blazing Chrome. It's like so. It's good to hear that the game is running fine on the Switch. Now, over on the Xbox side, is this game taking advantage of the Xbox One X? Is there 4K resolution?
Not specifically at the moment. We really we're looking into how to. It's funny because of the style of the game. Our art looks amazing because we've had some amazing artists, and we didn't want to push it onto X without making sure it was going to look just as good.
Mm-hmm. Did she drop out?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, it was about us wanting to make sure that the frame rate was also the same on everything. So once again, it's hopefully in the future we'll be able to make an announcement about that as well.
Okay. And now over on the PC side of things, is this game available for the Windows platform only, or is there also a Mac and Linux build?
Yes, there are also Mac and Linux builds, and they've all got our latest update as well. It's hard with Mac and Linux sometimes with a really small team, and we never wanted to. Each of our Mac and Linux builds have come out within that 2 weeks of every update, because we know that there are only, for us anyway. I'm sure other games have different amounts of different platform users, but we didn't want to just push out the Linux build or the Mac build to those, 5 or 10 people who wanted it and have it not at the same quality. So for us, it may always take that extra week to get those builds out, but we're pretty adamant on making sure that the quality of the build that you're getting isn't subpar just because you do choose to play on the Mac or Linux.
It's good to hear. I mean, it's always an iffy prospect, yeah, as you mentioned, when it comes to small developers and supporting Mac and especially Linux builds. There have been many a developer on our program that have said it's just not worth doing a Linux build.
We definitely sort of ourselves said that originally, but as we were in early access, we were actually getting Linux players reaching out and asking if we were going to have a build. And so for us, if we've got 5 people interested in that build, then why not spend that little bit extra time to get it out there for them?
And in terms of the PC storefront scene, is this game only on Steam?
So Steam, we're also available on Green Man Gaming as well. But
Okay.
they're a Steam key seller.
Yeah, that's still that's Steam keys. Now, I'm talking more. Are there any plans to bring this game to like GOG?
We definitely are reaching out to everywhere now. Unfortunately, GOG didn't want the game at the time, but I figure an email again now that our biggest update has just come out. Maybe we'll change their mind.
Curated storefronts, like believe me,
they are an interesting beast.
That is a word for them. I have words for them. I won't repeat them here.
But for us as small developers as well, it almost feels like every sale does count. So if there are people who use a different one and we can get on it, then at the moment we're happy to go with teams that are also supporting the developer as well and trying not to I don't know. Yeah, it's that do you get a sale but only get 10% of it because you're selling it through somewhere else? Is that sale still worth it?
I'm like, that depends on a whole slew of factors. I'm like,
yeah.
Believe it or not, that is actually a very complicated question.
Yeah, yo.
I imagine but that's more for the audience. It's like, right now I'm gonna see if my team here have any questions about Damsel.
Fantastic.
I'm good for now, but I'm looking forward to checking the game out.
Oh, awesome.
I was trying to play a little bit ago, but it wouldn't recognize my PS4 controller. Is that just kind of a bug that needs ironed out, or?
Do you at all? Would you have your controller settings in Steam set up?
I tried forcing that off, and it didn't work either because it's usually
really?
on.
Okay, that definitely is then a small bug at the moment. We have been on it and trying to figure out what's going on between the Steam settings that are there and the way that the program that we use for our connecting controllers was working.
Yeah, 'cause
Sorry
some
about that,
games-
though. That sucks.
It's fine. Yeah, some games just don't like to recognize PS4 controllers for some reason. I just didn't know if there was something that messed up on my end or not.
Well, hopefully we can get that fixed soon. And it's actually
Alright.
really good to know that you did force it off as well. It gives me more ideas for searching for those bugs.
Indeed.
Yeah, I played it a while ago and I enjoyed it, but I had the same problem as Petty Fan with my controller as well.
Okay.
I was using a Logitech instead of PS4. But, yeah, I liked it so far.
How long ago do you think you played it?
Oh, I played a while ago, about 40-some minutes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I liked what I played of. This felt about the first episode beat.
Nice. Yep. The levels get the environments that you play in get much bigger as you get through those next episodes as well. We sort of, because it's quite a fast paced and kind of brutal as well. We have that arcade mechanic of you don't get much life. You can die pretty quickly. We wanted to ease people in to that style. We had so many people when it was much harder at the beginning, just quit straight up. It was watching people on the show floor not liking to die within the first 10 seconds of playing a game. So we had to ease people into it a little bit more.
Right, is that all the questions?
I'm good.
Okay. I'll end things by asking about the world of Damsel. How did you come up with all like the characters and the whole gothic vampire setting?
So in the original game that we were creating, we wanted this style. We've always had an enjoyment of vampires, and Anthony actually was originally writing a story for it that sort of encompassed the Bram Stoker Dracula story a little bit, and sort of went back to that era of vampires. And then as it evolved, we found the fun as well in our vampires, in the morts, in their dress. There's a little the corporate part of the game and the story came into it more, and so you'll find that a lot of our morts are actually styled pretty close to maybe the SS itself, that corporate style of being in suits, but then being having their moral aspects on the other side not being as good. And so that whole world grew from the idea of us having a game called Damsel and trying to bring in some more whimsy into it. So that's how our whole world ended up getting built.
All right then. I think I'm good as far as questions go at this point. We have to move on to our next segment. Thank you, Susan, for being here, taking time out of your schedule, and telling us about your game.
No worries.
Indeed. So the game is Damsel. It's available for the Steam platform currently, and it is coming out to the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch on August 7th. Is the price going to be $16.99 on the consoles?
Yes, across the board it's $16.99.
Okay. So be sure to, if you don't want to pick it up on the PC, go pre-order it on your console of choice. Twilight, play us to the next segment. gonna have to chance it here because once again, tape delayed music. We good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So welcome to the topic of discussion. We were originally going to talk about this last week, but the interview ran long, so here we are. We are talking about the Contra franchise for very specific reasons. Mainly because Blazing Chrome came out. Go see our review on it. It's a big homage to the Contra series. Indeed, the Konami Corporation has put a Contra collection. It's all the good Contra games, minus I think like Neo Contra on the PlayStation 2 and Contra 4 on the DS. It's like all the good, classic Contras that you know and remember, or you might remember differently. We'll get into that in a second. But, for those who missed what Contra was, it is probably the seminal, the prototypical side-scrolling run-and-gun action game. Now, it's hard to say if it's the finest example of that particular genre. People go back and forth between this and Metal Slug.
I mean, the first example is rarely the finest.
Contra isn't the first example either, but
I shouldn't say first. I should say establishing. Although I guess some people do still say that Castlevania Symphony of the Night is the best Metroidvania. So what do I know?
I'm like, it's actually a fairly hotly contested question.
I mean,
that's
whatever else you say, Contra was still designed very much with the arcade mentality of, wow, this is hard enough that I'd spend way more coins on it.
I mean,
which is why there's a code in some versions to give you friggin' 30 lives instead of 3.
Right. It's like Contra. Contra was born in the arcades. This gets lost because honestly, the arcade versions were not super successful. Now, in fact, I remember playing the arcade version of Contra. Didn't get very far because, shock upon shocks, Contra is, a fucking hard game. It is that way because arcade design is designed to suck the quarters out of your pockets.
Mm-hmm.
It's like its average, you should be going about 3 minutes per coin. Yeah. That's why 1cc'ing an arcade game is such a monumental feat. And, you can apply that to the NES and really any version of Contra. Because, the NES was not the only platform that received a port of Contra. It's probably the best port. Not just because, the other versions were on home computer systems, and how do I put this? Oh, right, the computers at the time sucked. Were absolutely fucking garbage when it came to run-and-gun action games like this.
Pretty much all of the I feel like home computer games at that point were pretty much single screen or entire screen scrolling deals, because that was a comparatively late innovation in early gaming, was smooth scrolling, especially smooth scrolling that could go in more than one direction.
Right. I mean, you got that by the time of Commander Keen, or for example with the MX family of computers, rather late into the MSX2 period. One of the defining features of the original MSX was the shitty scrolling. And Contra was no stranger to that phenomenon. Point of order is, the NES version of Contra is remembered for a very good reason. It's basically the definitive version of the game. And it's worth noting that the design, the actual design of the NES Contra follows in the footsteps of the actual arcade game. There are changes, but it's none of this. If you played Ninja Gaiden on the NES and Ninja Gaiden in the arcades, those are literally two different games. There is a term for that. It is the reformulated game. Contra is an actual, reinterpretation of the arcade game onto the NES. Actually better for it because it divides the post-fortress levels into 4 separate levels instead of one long-ass level. But yeah, it's like it's mostly the same in terms of design. It's just it's got better controls, tighter controls. It is weird to say that about a console game versus an arcade game, but once again, there's a reason why the arcade games are not particularly well remembered. And indeed, like, Contra was one of those staples of the NES library. Like, if you didn't have Contra, you probably knew somebody that did, and you engaged in the multiplayer. Indeed, that was the case with my household. Not only did we have Contra, I knew people who did. It's especially important because one of the defining aspects of Contra is the multiplayer. The
two-player simultaneous co-op.
Right.
Featuring guy with red pants and guy with blue pants.
They do have games.
I know.
And I suppose we should get into the whole Probotector thing. So, censorship laws are weird.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not so weird. The European version of Contra, isn't called Contra. In fact, it wouldn't be called Contra until, I want to say, Contra Hardcore. Maybe the Contra, like one of the Contras on the PlayStation. Point is, back in the NES and up to the Super NES era, the game was called Probotector. The major difference, the characters, your avatars, were robots.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever arbitrary reason, the
something violence with humans, something.
That's basically what it boils down to. It's like mechanically, aesthetically, everything else from what I've seen, it's pretty much the same. It's just, I think this is Germany, because Germany had that law that said all humans need to be not humans. I'm looking at you, original Turok.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Contra, rather simple game, rather fun game, very hard game, genre defining game, and was a successful one.
Indeed.
And that means sequels. Indeed, the first sequel was a game called, Super Contra, or Super C if you played the console version.
Because at that point in the United States, the word Contra was kind of unpopular for certain reasons that definitely may involve a certain president who played a cowboy in movies. So
Super C came out a few years later. Not nearly as well remembered as the original game. I've played Super C. I played it back in the day. It's fine. They nerfed the Konami code in that one. Instead of giving 30 lives, it gives 10 lives.
Yep.
Well, wasn't there also one version where, like, if you put in the Konami code, it would, like, punish you?
That was I think that was Alien Wars, or was
okay.
or it was Gradius 3. It was like one of the Super NES ones, because what they did was, instead of up, down, left, right, it was up, down, L, R, L, R.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got cues. You know, fucking Heretic did this as well, but that is a topic for another day. Anyway, Super Contra, it was basically more of the same in certain regards. In other regards, it was actually quite the departure.
Yep.
So what is meant by that is Contra is known for its gimmick levels. In the original one, you had the Fortress levels, which had this faux 3D field of view thing going on, and you battled through various rooms until you got to the boss. Those were replaced by top-down affairs in Super Contra.
Yep.
Both in the arcade and the NES version. I'm trying to remember if I think they are the same thing, but it's been a while. And I never played the arcade version of this game. Best thing that this game did was adjust the fireball attack. For anyone who's played the original Contra, they grew to hate the fire power-up.
That's the one that does, like, the weird spirally attack that's impossible to hit anything with?
Yeah, it doesn't do that in the sequels. And like I said, it's fine if slightly unmemorable. Couldn't really tell you about like the PC version, the PC versions about this. This one came out in 1990, so we're talking further along the timeline. It's like probably not the PC version, but I do see that there's an Amiga version of this. That probably, if there was a computer version that came out okay, it would be the Amiga version, because by 1990 on the Amiga, they had more than figured out how to do smooth scrolling. Oh no, they were doing advanced parallax scrolling that nothing else could do. Just go look at fucking Shadow of the Beast, 1989. There wasn't another home platform that was doing that in that particular year. Arcade's a different story, but again, that's the arcade. And going through the line, Contra Force, not actually a Contra game. Like, it's one of those instances. It's a game called Arkhound. It just got the Contra name slapped on it, so it'd sell more copies. And from what I understand, it's pretty terrible. The thing of it is, it came out in 1992. We're talking post Super NES launch. In fact, it's actually canonic. In terms of release schedule, it came out after Contra 3: The Alien. So it had that going against it. And indeed, Contra 3: The Alien War. It's hard to say if this is the pinnacle of Contra, but if it's not this, then it's the other 16-bit Contra game. Contra Hardcore. The 16-bit era was really weird.
Yeah.
It's like because the consoles were actually different.
Oh yeah, that was a weird time.
It's like Contra 3 and Contra Hardcore actually do the differing systems aesthetic things. Contra 3 has a brighter color palette, and Contra Hardcore looks a fair amount grittier than its Super NES counterpart, as you'd expect. That being said, I think my tip of the hat goes to Contra Hardcore because its gimmick levels are better than Contra 3's gimmick levels. Contra 3 has the top-down stages return, only now they're showcasing Mode 7! Look at us, we can do scaling and rotation! And it's really fucking annoying. Yeah. Contra Hardcore, by contrast, has bike levels. They're not amazing, but, they're not very ancient, gimmicky levels that feel, ancient and gimmicky. You can just feel 1991's hottest tech.
Yep.
It's not the only place you find this kind of thing with Super NES games. But yeah, and it's also worth noting that the 16-bit era is when Contra moves from being an arcade franchise to being a home franchise. Indeed, Contra 3 was the first Contra game to be developed exclusively for consoles. Other things that this game brought in were Contra 3 was the game that introduced the dual power-up thing. You get one power-up,
and then you can swap back and forth between a second power-up.
Yeah, and if you die, you get to retain the other power-up. Blazing Chrome completely lifted that from here.
Yep.
Yeah, with more, but still, yeah.
I'm like, and like I said, this is probably the peak until we get to the PlayStation 2 era, because then Contra was one of those franchises that really didn't know what to do, how to approach the 3D age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we get duds like Contra Legacy of War and the Contra Adventure. It's generally considered to be gigantic pieces of shit.
Well, it's really easy to either do the Contra formula badly or make a game that doesn't follow the formula well. And by badly, I mean, it follows the formula, but it sucks because you didn't do the balance right. Or make a game that just call it Contra, even though it really doesn't feel like Contra at all.
Well, it tried to transpose Contra. Both games tried to transpose Contra into the third dimension, and they really didn't know how to do that. It's not impossible because the overhead run and gun genre had been a thing all the way back to the NES era. It's just that was the domain of things like Commandos and Akari Warriors. Contra wasn't those. And you can see that because this was an evolutionary dead end. Then we get into the PlayStation era. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot to say about Shattered Soldier or Neo Contra. I hear they're really good titles, but I didn't have them, so I can't speak to them. I did have Contra 4. Didn't get too far in it. Contra 4 was a DS game done by Way Forward back in 2007, if I'm recalling. Mm-hmm. And let me see here. It's got that DS problem of, we used both screens for gameplay. Never mind the gap. And the murder that is contained within the gap. Like,
Yeah.
and that was like the last major title that bore the Contra name. There were more Contra games after that. You had Contra Rebirth, which was a WiiWare remake of Contra. There was Hardcore Uprising, a bizarre sequel to Contra Hardcore that was done by Arc System Works. And you've got the upcoming Contra Rogue Core.
They keep giving it to people who are, like, good at games, but, like, maybe not that game.
I'm like, well, Hardcore Uprising is a good game. It's just not a Contra game, literally. It threw out the Contra name because its aesthetic is so fucking different. Like, anyway, so that's a basic overview of the Contra series. Wish I could go more in depth with the later games, but those haven't been ported to modern systems yet. It's like, thankfully, the 32-bit games have been left in the dustbin of history. But yeah, Contra, good franchise. You should go play it.
Indeed.
Anyway, so that'll about do it for this topic, and indeed, this will about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon, coming up on the week ahead. So, Friday, we have a multiplayer session planned. It might not go through because we have power concerns, let's say. But we are planning to stream a multiplayer session of the Blackout Club, a new survival first-person co-op game. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. And indeed, we are planning to review that on Sunday, along with reviews for Paradox Soul and Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. Indeed, we finally got a review copy of that PC version. So that's what's coming up in the time ahead. And until Friday, I shall wish you good gaming.